A lot of the editing I had to do for my final project involved I had to rewrite a lot to do with Escalade. That's because at first he was just a case study, so a lot of the intro and stuff didn't really talk about him. Uh, so I really made my thesis focus on motivation in terms of Escalade. Uh, I did most of that first, and I think that really helped me because it allowed for the rest of the analysis and everything to just kind of run freely. Um, and Other than that, I think he was a strong character to pick for motivation. He has a lot of interesting insights as you watch the show, especially since he was introduced as a character that you would think you wouldn't really get a lot into. He seemed more like a flat villain. Uh, but then his interesting relationship with the main character really helped exemplify what he's able to do as a morally gray character. One of the best written ones, I think, in recent years, especially for the fact that you don't really ever know what he's thinking right until it happens, but it never feels out of the blue. It's always very tight character writing. His dialogue also reflects this a lot. He's a very well spoken character. And I think this plays into motivation a lot because he's only as well spoken as he is because it helps him get to his ends. He's a very wise character and oddly acts as a father character to the main father figure to the main character, which I kind of dabbled in a little bit. I think uh, he also helps me write a lot into the insights of motivation because since he does things in such a morally gray way, it leaves a lot of room for discussion that can open up to even more topics. And I think that he made a very strong case study for the first part, and I think he makes even stronger claims in the XYZ format. Next character I wanted to talk about, the revisions I made on were Victor. He's from Arcane, recently concluded on Netflix. I would recommend watching if you have not. Uh, it's a very strong show, also with really good character dialogue, and that's one of the reasons I chose him. It's that in a lot of ways, when you look at it, he becomes almost a mirror to Askeladd. Uh, Askeladd is a Viking who is kind of known in the show and does a lot of bullying of like the little guy. He takes over a village because he knew that they couldn't do anything about it, and it helped him further his goals at the time. Played again into his motivation, and Victor is the kind of character that would have been in that village. He's very weak physically. At the beginning of the show, he kind of seems like a pushover, um, and but also in the show, he's a good-natured man. He helps whenever possible, and he left Zahn in the first place to go to Piltover to try to make advancements to bring back the Zahn and make the quality of life better for his people. Um, Unlike Askeladd, though, his motivations, instead of clearing out towards the end of his arc, become a little bit more malintended. He decides that the technological advancements he created during his time in Piltover caused a new pathway in which he was able to forcibly, what he called, evolve humans. But the main point of the evolution was that he took away their will. So uh, he did this because he still in his mind thought that his motivations were clear and that he was helping people. Although later on, his friend Jace, which I talk about in the essay a little bit, um, kind of tells him the holes in his essay, or in his motivations, and how that's kind of turned him into what you see in the background, which is he like casts away all of his humanity for the sake of his goals because he sees himself still as the good guy. And I think that really helped further my points about Askeladd because Askeladd started as this villain, but now we see a character who started as the hero and becomes the villain. And I think that kind of helped me prove a lot too in my writing that whether you start out as a villain or a hero doesn't really matter. Your motivations are really the key thing that I was trying to get at there because you see the downfall and the uprising of characters due to their motivations. And when you compare these two, they have a lot of control factors. Like not a lot of them about them is different in a lot of ways. So it really helps bring home and exemplify what is different. And I think due to that fact, he becomes a great Y claim that helps really strengthen what I had to say about Askeladd. And finally, I wanted to talk a little bit about the revisions and edits I made in terms of connecting the two characters. And this, along with the Victor writing, I forgot to mention that, I'm sorry, were all entirely new material. None of it was from the SA1, obviously. So I had a lot of work to do here. I did these parts both last in order to really get all of my foundation really set right. But I think these two really brought some interesting insights together now that I had developed both of them separately. I've kind of mentioned a little bit, but these two can really be seen as opposite sides of the same coin. And they both, in their minds, have this idea that they're like the chosen one, the perfect hero. And both of them kind of get that bubble popped at the end. But it's different because of the fact that both of them think they have this claim, but one originally starts out kind of ignoring this claim, and that kind of set his motivations right because he realized that he was kind of being arrogant, and the other one started out arrogant, being Askeladd. But then once you see the opposite transitions happen, and that really proves that it's just a spectrum, which I was also trying to get at in the connections. And I think both of these characters really prove that and make my claims really strong and really made the conversation complex because I get to talk about all these morally gray decisions that they do, which I really enjoyed talking about. And I think it makes any claims I made during this part very strong. This part was probably the hardest to write just because I felt a lot of pressure. I just built up both of these characters for so long and in a majority of my writing for this essay, and now I had to have it all come to some climactic payoff. But I think I'm pretty happy with how it went, and how it happened. The revision process, this part probably took the same time as the other two combined, just because I wrote like I want to say 6 or 7 renditions. But because of that too, I think the final rendition comes out very strong. I like the way that I present the ideas and the conclusions I come to. The wording was one of the biggest problems I had because I was trying to say things, but I didn't really know how to say it. So I ended up rewatching both the climaxes of the shows to try to remind myself of what I thought in the initial watching of the shows. I think that helped a lot too because then I grounded myself back into the material I was covering. But I think both of these were great case studies that really strengthened the Z claim, and those were all of the major revisions I made during this project.